corporations to have a better understanding within their own supply chain of their customer. That is invaluable because I think we all know as business owners, feedback is a gift. Because we stuck with Made in Canada, we had the factory, we had the resources during a time when supply chain shut down. So I think supply chain should be viewed as an investment and a risk mitigation as opposed to a profit center.
Today we are diving into Canadian apparel manufacturing and the power of local production, supplier diversity, and sustainable fashion.
Understand your why. Understand why you're in business, what your value proposition is. Execute with intentionality.
Hello everyone, this is Kripa Anand and welcome to the Canadian SME Small Business Podcast, where we explore insights and solutions that help businesses build ethical, resilient, and inclusive supply chains. Today we are diving into Canadian apparel manufacturing and the power of local production, supplier diversity, and sustainable fashion. Joining us today is Kathy Cheng, President of WS&Co and founder of Redwood Classics Apparel. A champion of North American craftsmanship and inclusive economic ecosystems, Kathy has been recognized among Canada's top 100 most powerful women and awarded for her advocacy in supplier diversity. We'll explore the strategic value of Made in Canada, the economic impact of diverse supply chains, and her new sustainable collaboration with Trimark. So before further ado, let's welcome the special guest. Kathy, it's such a pleasure to have you here on the podcast.
Thank you, Kripa. I'm delighted to be here. Thank you for having me.
Now, Kathy, WS&Co and Redwood Classics Apparel have doubled down on Made in Canada, right?
Yes.
Specifically when much of these industries moved offshore.
Yes.
So let's start by understanding a little about the background, the story. Why did your family choose long-term local manufacturing, and how exactly does it support quality and labor fare as well? Go ahead.
I would say let's start off with, I think, a story that many Canadians can appreciate and probably relate to is our immigrant story. I wasn't born here. My family wasn't. We came when I was very young. And, like most immigrant families, I think it was really challenging to be in an environment where the language was different, everything was different. And I remember my dad, he used to work 3 jobs, and my mom worked full time. I was a latchkey kid at the age of 5. And it's kind of a long-winded story, but, I think we've always had the entrepreneurial spirit. So my dad and his brother and sister started a company, a small sewing contracting company in 1988 with 5 people and 10 machines. And over the years, by the late 90s, early 2000, we were employing directly close to 500 people. And this was all local manufacturing. And we grew from being a sewer to cutting and full service apparel manufacturing to even have local knitting. I think, that was definitely an interesting journey.
Yeah.
But what was more interesting and where we started to build that resilience was when China joined WTO in 2001. And quotas got lifted and everyone went offshore. And then we moved to 2008, and there was our last global financial recession. I mean, arguably you could say that.
Yeah.
And by that time, we were down to about 100, 150 people. Making T-shirts, sweatshirts, and track pants in Canada was not the most attractive industry to be in, especially when you're competing cents to a dollar.
Yeah.
But we held on because I think back about all the new immigrants that we had onboarded, and we were immigrants ourselves, and it was a livelihood for us. And the craft started to disappear. And so in 2009, I became my basically at the end of 2008, my dad asked me to be his business partner. I selfishly didn't want to. I'm an only child, so the factory was my sibling that took away all the attention. Um, but I call it my aha moment where I'm on the factory floor and the emotion came out, and I think kind of got out that we may not have the factory anymore. And a number of our makers have been with us for 10, 15, 20 years at this point. So it was just recognizing that all of a sudden it hit me that I have had an amazing education. I have had a wonderful life in North America because of the factory, because of our makers. So that was always, I think what started off as my loyalty to our family of makers, our loyalty to my family,
Yeah.
um, was the driver. And so we humbly restructured in 2009. That's where I became my dad's business partner. And we humbly restructured with 40 people.
Wow. Now that you look back, I'm sure you'd be so proud of the choices that you made, right?
Um, yes, yes. I think, at that time, it was probably not the most financially smartest decision.
Yeah.
Um, m- but it was very meaningful.
Right. No, definitely. I think even me and a lot of our listeners will relate to what you're saying, especially about being an immigrant entrepreneur, because the challenges that we face, be it culture, language, ethnicity, we know the struggles that we face on a personal level. And, keeping all of that aside and just, climbing the ladder to success is something that I'm very proud of for you. And kudos to, what you've done and where you've come now. That's amazing. That was a very courageous and I'd say a strategic move at that point of time, because it highlights that local manufacturing strengthens community economies and allows for a tighter quality control as well. So that's amazing. Now, the focus turns to sustainable fashion and how upcycling sits at the core of your manufacturing approach. Now, Kathy, how does the Super Fleece collection reflect Redwood Classics' slow fashion sustainability?
First and foremost, I would say it's about quality and longevity. Trimark is one of the largest suppliers in Canada, well, actually, in North America for apparel. And it's in the branded merchandise industry, which it's a $28 billion industry. It's a sleepy industry that
Yeah.
people don't really think about.
Mm.
But really, we're selling to corporations. And if you think about sustainability, the power of a decision maker for corporations, instead of, you and I can want to buy sustainably.
Yeah.
And that's one to one.
Right.
That's the effect. But when a corporate decision maker is intentional and responsible with their spending power,
Correct.
that amplifies and that helps build communities. And that also helps us slow down the destruction of the earth.
Right.
So I think longevity is a big part. Let's not overproduce. If you're going to put your brand on a product, let's put it on a product that will last a long time and people want it. And there's a business case for it too, because there's the ROI. If you put your logo on a product that will only be worn once or twice and it
Yeah.
becomes a rag, which we've often seen, right? Like the industry has been called trinkets and trash for a reason. You go to conferences and you're giving out bad quality goods, people don't want to keep it, and you're finding it left in the hotel rooms.
Right.
So the I think, what's important here is at the heart of it is local manufacturing. The products will last for a long time, and it enables corporations to make better decisions. And of course, not everything has to be the most expensive and has to last longest, but there's that option there.
Yeah. Wow, that's a pretty impressive innovation, Kathy. It proves that sustainability and premium quality can be successfully merged to create, compelling products in the branded merchandise industry as well. So that's amazing. Uh, Now let's shift our attention to your advocacy for supplier diversity and, its measurable economic impact. Now, Kathy, what is the economic value of supplier diversity for Canada and corporations? I know you touched down on a bit, but if you could just go down on the deeper impact. Please go ahead.
It's economic inclusion. It's economic enablement.
Yeah.
Um, you know, I didn't grow up with a lot of access, and I'm going to steal this one from a good friend of mine, Kay Alvaz, who poignantly said, and it's absolutely true, access is equity
Mm.
as much as equity is access, right?
Right.
So with supplier diversity, what it does is it enables us as a diverse supplier, a certified diverse supplier, an opportunity to be at the table, to bid for it. We don't lead with it because that's not the reason. We're not going to get the business because we're diverse certified.
Of course.
But the business case is also, when you look at large organizations, typically they're not as innovative, right? Because they can't be as agile. It's just by nature of how a business is scaled.
Yeah.
You've got more processes. So innovation is number one. Also the ability to really give back to your community and provide, a stepping stone for them to have access to economic enablement. I think that's also very, very important. And the truth of the matter is, I'm looking at some of the logos in this room. I'm a client of RBC. I'm a client of UPS. So I think for corporations to have a better understanding within their own supply chain
Yeah.
of their customer, that is invaluable, because I think we all know as business owners, feedback is a gift.
Definitely, you articulated that pretty well. That's a powerful strategic insight, Kathy. It confirms that inclusive procurement is a major economic driver that fosters innovation and strengthens overall supply chain resilience. And it's not just about getting the business, it's also about standing strong for what you believe in. So that's
absolutely
beautiful. All right, it's time for a quick break right here, but don't go anywhere. We'll be back in just a moment to talk about leadership, community, impact, and how businesses can drive real change. Stay tuned.
Hey, you think you know UPS? Yeah, that's us. Everybody knows that. You know what you didn't know? This. Okay, try to keep up. Ocean, us. Ground, rail, air, so us. Guess who? Us. Customs cleared, borders cleared, done. Us. Still with me? Wait for it. Boom. Us. Intelligent, automated, fulfillment. Us. Yep. Healthcare too. Digital your thing? Yeah. Well, book it, ship it, track it. You feeling me yet? Yep. That's all us. That's all UPS.
Welcome back, listeners. Let's continue the conversation and dive into how Kathy's leadership extends beyond manufacturing and into community influence and women's sports. Now, let's look at how your leadership, extends beyond the business through community impact and investment, specifically in women's sports. So, how does investing in Toronto's first women's pro soccer team reflect your values?
Wow. First off, I have to say, what a privilege and honor for the opportunity to even invest in Toronto's first women's professional soccer team.
Yeah.
Um, it's a reflection of, so first off, let me share. I know nothing about soccer. I don't play sports. I didn't grow up with
Yep.
with following any of it. But if you think about soccer, it's probably one of the most inclusive sports.
Correct.
It's probably one of the most sports where um, it more people can play, because if you have raw talent,
Yeah.
you need your feet, you have the talent, and you need a ball.
Right.
Right? How many sports out there can say that? So you're able to have that opportunity to give more people to be part of part of the culture and part of it. But another part of it is, what I learned from the co-founding group um, was that we lose a lot of talent in Canada. We have amazing talent, but we have a ceiling. If you love soccer and you're fantastic and you're a woman, where do you go? You have to leave the country.
Of course.
So for us to, and for me to be personally part of an organization and a league that can help us foster and, make Canada great again. Like we are great, but make Canada amazing and be able to maintain that talent here. Um, that's really special.
Wow.
We're helping break the ceiling for women athletes.
Of course.
Yeah.
Once again, we're so proud of everything that you're doing, Kathy.
Can I just
Yeah.
interject for a sec?
Of course.
It's not me. It's our community. It is our family of makers. It's my family.
Of course.
It's my kids. It's my husband that enable me to, I think it's everybody in our community. So I find it really challenging when I get recognized for it because I don't think it is me.
It's a collective effort.
Yeah, I happen to be a voice. I happen to be a face. And I'm willing to use my voice, but I think we all have voices. And I hope, one of the things I often say is, we celebrate farm to table. We should celebrate the farmers. But when was the last time we ever celebrated maker to skin? A number of makers may not necessarily feel like they have a voice. So that's why I ended up being the face. So I just wanted to clarify it isn't me. It is everyone else behind that's supporting us.
Wow, that's again a beautiful thought process. And definitely, I completely agree with you. It's the collective effort of every single person behind the scenes, and only the person who is in front of the camera gets recognition, but it's also you and the entire community. So that's an inspiring example of investment, Kathy. It highlights that using one's platform and, capital is key to advancing equity and community initiatives. So that's beautiful. Hello, Canadian business leaders. Are you looking to strengthen your supply chain and drive economic inclusion? Learn from Kathy Cheng, president of Redwood Classics, about the strategic value of made in Canada manufacturing, the power of supplier diversity programs, and the exciting launch of the new exclusive heavyweight fleece collection with Trimark. Now, let's continue our conversation with Kathy. Finally, the conversation moves to the Made in Canada Trimark collaboration and what it signals for the future supply chains. So, what do you have to say about Made in Canada? I know we touched on it, in the initial few questions, but specifically, what does it mean for the future of, promotional products?
I think it's really looking at supply chain. COVID was a big lesson for all of us, right? Global supply chain shut down and it was sudden and we didn't know where to go. I would say after COVID, I realized and reflecting, I fell in love with my business all over again because we realized because we stuck with Made in Canada, we had the factory, we had the resources, we have raw material. During a time when supply chain shut down, we closed some of our lines to make medical grade gowns for our community. We did one-to-one giving on the mass program. I think it was approximately like $250,000 worth of masks that we donated across Canada, from nonprofits to hospitals to shelters to Indigenous groups.
Yeah.
It's because we were made in Canada and we stuck with it. We had the infrastructure. So I think it's supply chain resilience. That's what Made in Canada means.
Yeah.
With specifically to Trimark, it's also, without Toronto traffic, we're about 15 minutes drive away from them. So we're enabling as part of their supply chain. They don't need to overproduce and they decorate in-house. So their warehouse, their decoration is close by. Having a local supply chain enables flexibility, lower minimums. You don't have to overproduce. And also it's minimizing a bit of that, I think, supply chain risks. So I think, supply chain should be viewed as an investment and a risk mitigation as opposed to a profit center.
That's an ambitious vision, Kathy. Definitely what you said, it confirms that Strategic partnership and premium sustainable apparel are the defining trends for the Canadian marketplace, and you've played, such a major role in making that happen. I'm loving this conversation, Katie, and definitely we're going to invite you one more time where we can dive into such deeper conversations. But for now, before we let you go, if there's one final message that you have for Canadian SMEs, specifically about building ethical and profitable businesses at the same time, what do you have to say about that?
I would say understand your why. Understand why you're in business, what your value proposition is, and execute with intentionality. I think that's really important. Every decision you make,
Yeah.
be intentional.
That's a golden advice, I'd say. It has been such a pleasure having you on the podcast, Katie. Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you. Thank you, Kripa, for having me.
All right, that was an insightful conversation with Kathy Cheng of Redwood Classics Apparel on Made in Canada manufacturing, supplier diversity, and sustainable fashion. To all the listeners, thank you so much for tuning into the Canadian SME Small Business Podcast. Subscribe for more expert insights and visit CanadianSME.ca for tools and resources to support your business. And lastly, a very special thank you to our podcast partners, UPS, ADP, and Google for their ongoing support. So see you in the next episode. Kripa Anand signing off.